Imagine plunging into the ocean, searching for ruins lost to time, and discovering the name of Allah carved in a stone, whispering through centuries. A diver chasing forgotten history finds something far greater, a hidden civilization, ancient Quranic verses, and a peace he never knew existed. Watch how mystery, suspense, and the roaring sea led a skeptical explorer to embrace Islam with a heart trembling in awe. What if the ocean didn't just hide history, but guided a soul to the truth? Watch till the end and feel the power of faith that even the sea couldn't drown. The morning sky hung heavy with clouds the color of old iron, as if the sea itself had drawn a veil across the sun. Standing at the bow of the abyss seeker, Daniel Blake squinted into the horizon, feeling the rough boards beneath his boots vibrate with the pulse of the waves. For 20 years, the sea had been his refuge and his testing ground, but today felt different. An unsettling stillness clung to the salt-laden air, whispering of secrets too long buried. Daniel had made a career of chasing ghosts beneath the water, wrecked galleons, amphories spilling ancient wine, forgotten ports now little more than coral-encrusted rubble. History, he liked to say, never truly died, it merely sank and waited. Yet what brought him to these Yemeni waters was something more than curiosity. It was a legend as old as the tides, a city swallowed by the ocean, whose inhabitants were said to have lived and died with the name of Allah on their tongues. The locals had warned him. Some said the ruins were cursed. Others whispered of voices heard in the deep. Daniel had brushed aside their warnings. But as he checked his gear for the third time, his fingers trembled slightly, an unfamiliar tremor for a man who had faced hurricanes and sea serpents of human imagination. Omar, the soft-spoken Yemeni diver and translator, placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "The sea tests every heart, Daniel," he said gently, his accent coloring the words. "Maybe today it will test yours." Daniel forced a grin, but the unease in his chest refused to be laughed away. The hum of the boat's engine faded as the captain dropped anchor. Daniel felt the weight of the oxygen tank settle against his spine, the familiar bite of the regulator's mouthpiece. He paused, drawing in a breath of compressed air that tasted faintly of metal and oil. Then, without another word, he stepped backward into the sea. The plunge into the blue was like falling into memory. The world above dissolved into light and ripples, and the silent kingdom of water embraced him. Down he drifted, past schools of fish scattering like silver confetti, the pressure tightening around his chest. Light faded into muted twilight, then deeper still, where even sounds seemed to drown. Ahead, shapes emerged from the murk. Stone blocks the size of wagons, laid in lines too deliberate to be nature's work. Columns half-toppled, their capitals adorned with swirling patterns half lost to coral. As Daniel's floodlight swept across them, the carvings sprang into sharp relief, flowing script in a hand both ancient and hauntingly graceful. Then he saw it, 4 weather-worn letters carved deeply into the stone. Allah? Daniel froze, his heartbeat a hammer in the hush of the deep. He reached out, fingertips grazing the ancient inscription, and felt a tremor run up his arm. Not fear, but something older, heavier, like awe pressed into stone. Allah, the name he had heard in passing, seen in headlines, dismissed as foreign. Here, it was, surviving centuries of salt and storm. Daniel hovered there, suspended between disbelief and wonder, as silt drifted past like dust motes in cathedral light. Rising slowly, he broke the surface, gasping at the sudden roar of wind and wave. On deck, Omar waited, eyes searching Daniel's face. "What did you find?" he asked. Daniel swallowed. "A name," he said hoarsely. "Your God's name." Omar's gaze softened. "Not my God, Daniel. The God." Night fell heavy on the abyss seeker. The sky clouded, so the stars were only memories. The crew spoke quietly in Arabic, laughter tinged with the fatigue of salt and sun. Daniel sat apart, a fragment of stone in his hand, tracing the letters until the grooves felt etched into his skin. Sleep came fitful. He dreamed of sinking endlessly, past ruins lit by cold starlight, hearing whispers he could not quite catch. Each time he neared understanding, the sea swallowed the words, and he woke with his heart pounding. At dawn, they dived again. This time, Daniel ventured deeper, drawn by something he could not name. Beyond the columns, a low wall half buried in coral formed a ring around a courtyard choked with sand and broken tile. Daniel's floodlight found fragments of ceramic inscribed with verses. To Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. The words brushed something raw in him. In the emptiness of the deep, Daniel's usual skepticism felt small, brittle as sea glass. Among the rubble, something glinted. He brushed aside sand to reveal a leather-bound journal, swollen with water, but miraculously intact. The cover bore a single word, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. That night, with Omar's help, they pored over its pages. The script was Old Arabic, but Daniel learned to see the rhythm in its loops and lines. Omar translated, voice hushed. We built our homes on the remembrance of Allah. If the sea must take us, let it take us still in prayer. Daniel listened, his throat tight, as if each word pressed deeper into places he had kept hidden even from himself. It was history, yes, but more than that, it felt alive. The faith of these long-dead souls reached across centuries, brushing against the pulse of his own doubts. As days blurred into each other, Daniel found his dives less about discovery and more about communion. The ruins were silent, but in that silence, he heard questions he had spent a lifetime avoiding. Who are you beneath the labels? What do you worship when the sea strips away your arrogance? One evening, as a storm gathered, Daniel sat alone on deck. Lightning lit the horizon in brief, blinding glimpses. The journal lay open beside him, the ink dancing in candlelight. Rain drummed on the deck, wind tugged at the pages, and in that moment of fury, Daniel whispered aloud. Allah, the name felt strange and natural at once, like a word he had known before memory. The storm broke in earnest, waves hurling themselves against the hull, salt spray stinging his face. Daniel should have run below, but he stayed, his whisper growing into a prayer. If you're there, guide me. The words escaped without thought, raw and trembling. And in the chaos of wind and sea, he felt a calm take root. Not safety from the storm, but a strange acceptance of it. As if surrender was not defeat, but freedom. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed. Daniel stood drenched, the deck littered with debris, but inside, something had shifted. A lock had turned, though he did not yet know what had opened. The next dive took him deeper than before, through a narrow breach in the stone. His floodlight revealed a hidden chamber, walls inscribed from floor to ceiling with Arabic verses, their meaning only partially known to him, but their beauty unmistakable. At the center lay an ancient Quran, water-worn, yet miraculously preserved in parts. He touched it with reverence, though his gloves kept the warmth from his fingers. Words from Omar echoed in his mind. It is not the lips that read, Daniel, it is the heart. Surfacing, he found Omar waiting. Wordlessly, Daniel offered him the Quran. Omar's eyes misted. They wrote, hoping someone would remember, he whispered, maybe it was meant to be you. Daniel murmured, his voice shaking. That night, Daniel spoke more openly with Omar than he had with anyone in years. He confessed his fears, that faith meant surrendering reason, that he had done things he regretted, that he felt unworthy of forgiveness. Omar listened, patient as a stone worn by tide. Then he said softly, faith does not erase the past, Daniel. It gives it meaning. Even your regrets become part of your path to Allah. Silence stretched between them, heavy yet comforting. But what if I fail? Daniel asked. You will? Omar smiled gently. We all do. But Allah's mercy is greater than your failures. Daniel turned those words over in his mind as dawn colored the waves in gold. The next morning, under the pale light of sunrise, Daniel stood at the bow, heart pounding like surf against cliffs. His voice trembled, but he spoke the words Omar had taught him. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness Muhammad is his messenger. The words were both a confession and a surrender. The salt wind carried them away, but in his chest they remained, like an anchor or perhaps wings. He didn't feel thunderstruck. Instead, a profound quiet spread through him, as if after years of wandering, he had finally come home. In the days that followed, Daniel's dives felt transformed. Each descent became not just a search for relics, but a prayer, a reminder of Allah's signs in the depths. The ruins no longer felt like mere history. They felt like a living testament to faith enduring beyond stone and tide. He began to learn Arabic in earnest, so he could read the Quran himself. Each verse he understood felt like light breaking through water. One verse struck him deepest, and he found you lost and guided you. Quran 93:7. It felt written only for him. Ramadan arrived while at sea. Daniel fasted, rising before dawn to eat, breaking fast with dates Omar shared. The hunger was nothing compared to the sweetness of that first sip of water at sunset and the peace that settled after prayer. At night, they sat on deck under the canopy of stars. Omar recited Quran, voice low and melodic, and Daniel listened, the words filling spaces in him he hadn't known were empty. The ruins continued to reveal fragments, coins inscribed with Bismillah, mosaics of families of prayer, stone tablets bearing the names of Allah. But the most precious discovery for Daniel was not what he held in his hands. It was what grew in his heart. When the expedition ended, Daniel faced the land with mixed feelings. Part of him wanted to remain among those silent stones forever, to keep listening to what they had to say. But another part knew the real journey was only beginning. Returning home, he found his old life waiting, friends, colleagues, familiar places. Some noticed the change in him. The calm in his eyes, the gentleness in his voice. When asked, he shared what he had found. Not just a sunken city, but faith, mercy, and a truth older than any ruin. Some listened with respect, others with skepticism, but Daniel no longer felt the need to convince anyone. He had seen too much, felt too much. Faith, he learned, is a gift that cannot be forced, only witnessed. Years passed, but the memory of that lost civilization remained. Daniel visited other sites, dove other depths, but none moved in the same way. The ruins had become part of him, a reminder that even when cities sink and names are forgotten, what is built on remembrance of Allah endures. Standing again on the deck of the Abyss Seeker, years after that first discovery, Daniel whispered the Shaidah once more. The sea lay calm, reflecting the sky as though heaven and earth had momentarily agreed to meet. In the silence, he felt the presence of those believers whose city had vanished, but whose faith had reached him across the centuries. He closed his eyes and prayed for them, for Omar who had guided him, and for himself to remain steadfast. And in that prayer, Daniel understood the greatest truth of all, that the real treasure is not buried beneath coral and sand, but carried in the heart that remembers Allah. Beneath the tide, faith had never truly drowned. It had waited, patient as the sea, for a heart willing to listen. And Daniel, once a diver chasing shadows of the past, had become its living witness.